I strongly feel that we should look at this on the overhead, please. I'm sorry. I think the city council should read number 2. It's a strong point. It's a point of law. And these flags are not to be in here. These are flags for military installations only. Also, what happened on May 18th was very disturbing. I feel that this city council owes Mr. Silvio D'Angelo, Dinah Vargas, Nora Anaya, myself, and several others an apology for the flag incident that Ken Sanchez started. You promised Mr. D'Angelo that he could display that flag without any comments. And Mr. Sanchez here decided that he should start an argument which was out of line. And if there was a police officer that was willing to come and perform an arrest, that I would have been more than happy to do a citizen's arrest. But also, I don't see how the city of Albuquerque can stand the wasting of taxes that has been going on here, especially with this consent decree, which is absolutely worthless. But I would like to remind the city that the opera isn't over yet. Things can be done. And these police officers do not have immunity under Garrity. But as far as that goes, I don't see how any more money can be spent on Scott Greenwood and any Department of Justice, because they have not done anything to be transparent to this city council or to the people of the city of Albuquerque. There is no transparency. There still is no oversight of police departments. There is still no oversight, citizen oversight, period. It's all corporate owned. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Dinah Vargas, followed by Alan Wagman, followed by Ann Goodman.
Good evening, President Garduño and members of City Council. I'm not sure exactly what I had even planned to say today. I wasn't even going to talk, but it's like always so tempting, right? Harris, like, how many times, I mean, you don't even try to hide the fact that you don't represent people. And the fact is you were elected by many of those people here today as your constituents to represent people, but yet you don't. So the moment, you know when a breakdown is gonna happen here in council. So if someone comes up and they're ready to break down the everyday Albuquerque people and they wanna rip off our money and they wanna poof, 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 and then, the audience makes a noise or whatever, Harris right away jumping up to save the dude that's beating up on the people of Albuquerque. You are required to represent us. It's not an option. It's actually a requirement. It's part of your duty as a public official. But you see, New Mexico remains dead last by design because the politicians, much like Don Harris, much like Karen Montoya, New Mexico PRC, and that land thief Commissioner Patrick Lyons, New Mexico is dead last because we were sold out. And like for real cheap too, like it don't even cost a lot, to be sold out. Cup of coffee at Starbucks for Karen Montoya, and as long as you're willing to, beat up Albuquerque, it's cool, man. Come on over. We got a job for you. Harris will vet you in. And for the guys that are for the Santalino program or development, are you bringing your own water too? Or you're just here to say that it's going to make a lot of money because money ain't everything. It just simply ain't. As simple as that. Strange things have happened here, and no stranger would it be. You can say a lot of things, what you want at the end of the day, but the fact is, and specifically with Greedy Greenwood, you cannot never say that you did not know, because you knew. We know everything. You just choose not to represent us.
Thank you. Alan Wagman, followed by Ann Goodman, followed by Louis Boyer.
Mr. President, members of council, on April 10th last year, the Department of Justice pointed out that APD policy allowing officers to shoot into the passenger compartment of moving vehicles was bad policy. You don't always know who's in the vehicle with the driver. You could hit bystanders, and shooting the driver doesn't stop the vehicle. It just creates a driverless moving vehicle. Yet last month, over a year later, an APD officer shot at an SUV carrying a 5-year-old child in an apartment parking lot. Considering that the SUV was heading towards Rio Grande Boulevard, it was probably fortunate that the officer missed the driver. Even though the consent decree requires that this policy be changed, as of the time of that shooting, APD policy had not changed. I don't know if it has since then, but last month it hadn't. Is it difficult to change APD policy? No, it's not. Earlier this year, on February 2nd, by order of the New Mexico Supreme Court, the Second Judicial District Court began dismissing criminal cases in which APD had failed to timely turn over evidence it had gathered, specifically including written witness statements. Chief Eden moved quickly. By February 26th, barely 3 weeks later, he had signed a new policy on written witness statements. One might have hoped that the new policy would have compelled officers to expeditiously collect and process the statements. Instead, the chief dealt with the situation by ordering officers not to take written witness statements. It's unfortunate that that's the way he went, but he showed he can act quickly when he wants to. Where is this speed when it comes to complying with the consent decree? And how long will you fund this non-process? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Diane Goodman, followed by Louis Latoya, followed by David Silver. Daniel Lettieri, followed by Javier Benavides.
Good evening, Council President Gardino. I'm going to talk a little off topic tonight, I suppose, because I'm really just coming to give you guys a copy of an addendum to the original 10-city proposal. And it turns out that the people don't really go away, and they're still there, and they're still at it. But I think the idea brought forward tonight, which I've given, you should be getting a copy now. I would hope. Thank you. And it's just an expanded idea, and I would like to hear your guys' feedback at some point regarding it. And that's all I really have to say tonight, other than I did want to speak on something that Mr. Tannenbaum had brought up, and it was the rules. And a couple of weeks ago, there were some people that had come down to speak, and they had supporters stand behind them, and we all understand that, we all appreciate that, we all like that to be done. And then President Gardino had to ask that they not do that after the first presentation went, a second one did it again. And it's unfortunate that we've created such rigid rules in an attempt to sort of silence or suppress people's so-called passion, as Mr. Harris would call it. And even tonight, I do take issue, I don't think there was an interruption until the gentleman overspoke his 2 minutes, and then it was apparent that he was going to be given special consideration. The public doesn't see that, and they don't appreciate it. But it's really off topic of why I want to talk. I hope you guys take a look at this. It's a very serious proposal. There's a lot of private interest, as Mr. Benton, I think you'll really appreciate a lot of the ideas. That's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Kramer, before you leave, as you know, some of us have been very supportive of your initiative, what you want to do, and I continue to be supportive. In fact, after reading this, I've read your other proposal, to speak with you, see what can be done, and as quickly as possible. But I wanted to thank you specifically for the kind of work you've done. I've never heard you denigrate anyone or make someone feel bad, but rather make everyone feel good about what we could do. So for that, I appreciate what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Daniel Lettieri, followed by Javier Benavides, and our last speaker is Commissioner Ray Johnson.
Mr. President and honorable members of the council, first let me begin by congratulating you all on passing a budget that is in the spirit of compromise and bipartisanship, which is the very nature of politics. I would also like to thank you, Mr. Gardino, for a fabulous tenure, and you'll be missed. And I hope you do continue to be an active voice in the community. My name is Daniel O'Keery, and I'm here this evening to talk about the importance of youth and political dialogue. All too often, governments at all levels make critical decisions that dramatically change the lives of youth all across this nation, and all too often these decisions are reached without the input of the youth. Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, and Santa Fe all have youth advisory councils to help elected officials craft policy with youth input for the benefit of the youth. And Albuquerque isn't unique in this. Over 400 cities across this nation also have such youth councils to encourage youth participation in civic discourse. If that is the case, why can't the voices of youth be heard throughout the city, throughout the state, and throughout this country? Not because that youth aren't able to speak, they do have various opinions on many political topics, but because they do not know where to go to, or they feel uncomfortable approaching areas of power. So this evening I ask you to send a message to DC and to the constituents of New Mexico and the city that's saying Albuquerque has experienced benefits from youth inputs, and that the nation should also consider a national youth council for our national leaders to experience youth input. And with that, Mr. President and members of the council, I'll yield my time to question, and if not, I yield my time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. And thank you for the kind words, but I also wanted to say if you ever decided to be on this dais, the city would really welcome you, President. Next is Javier Benavides, followed by our last speaker, Commissioner Wayne Johnson. Mr. Benavides.
Thank you, Mr. President. I signed up to speak for R 220 and will withhold my comments on that issue until the bill's hearing, but also wanted to speak just about the maneuver that took place 2 weeks ago, which was incredibly disappointing for a lot of us. It was an unprecedented move to inhibit a fellow council from having a bill heard, and I think it's important to say that this wasn't through any kind of coordination with Council Devin. Just having worked at the City Council myself in the Council Services Department and sitting back in the audience and watching that, it was incredibly disappointing that this council has heard bills ranging from the nuclear weapons at Kirtland Air Force Base to the Patriot Act to climate change, you name it. It's a respect that's afforded to a fellow public official elected by their constituents to hear that legislation. SWAP, the organization that I work for, also works with partners around the country. I think of Mississippi, where the African American organizations, some of our partners there, are in the minority, but they consider their right to bring issues to the agenda to be a critical right. I mean, even if they're facing severe oppression, it's important to at least be on the agenda. This was, in effect, denying that right, and I think it really goes to show the unfortunate powers at play in this debate. And I hope that our city is better than that. It was said that this was brought up late in the process, which I would argue is hardly the case, given the potential 50-year commitment that this involves. And to that, I would also remind the council that Martin Luther King, Dr. King once said that there's never a wrong time to do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Benavides, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for reminding us that we also, all of us, are human. Sometimes not humane, but we have a bit of arrogance that happens once in a while, and unfortunately, things like that happen. I know that you have spent a lot of time not only on this issue, but issues related to City Council, but also the city. And thank you for heading up one of the organizations that I think is a beacon in this city, and that's the Southwest Organizing Project. Thank you for being the executive director, and thank you for the work you've done for a long, long time. So again, thanks.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Our last speaker tonight is Commissioner Wayne Johnson.
Mr. President, councilors, I have to say it's strange to be on this side of the dais after sitting in the room for so long. It's actually made me a little nervous. I'm starting to reconnect with folks in the audience, as you've been.
I doubt that.
Mr. President, councilors, I would ask you today to carefully consider the RC 15220, whether or not to pass it. Process is incredibly important. Working together is incredibly important. And I would submit to you tonight that we have in place a process for working together between the county and the city. We work through the planned communities criteria and the comprehensive plan, as well as through other entities like the Albuquerque-Bermeo County Water Utility Authority and Mr. Cobb, the Council of Governments. We have a lot of contacts and we have a lot of work that we do together, and that's as it should be. Tonight, you're going to consider a resolution that really has no basis in law. The county itself has land use authority for unincorporated areas of the county. And while we respect your opinion, the fact is it would only be an opinion because you haven't sat through the 17 hours of land use hearings that just the commission has. You haven't been at all 13 meetings between the County Planning Commission and the Bernalillo County Commission. You are necessarily, and by definition, behind the curve. So you would be doing a great disservice, not just to the landowner, but to the public in general, by making a decision that was ill-informed and really ill-advised for the process. So I look forward to working with you. Hopefully, if this whole process at the county and land use decision really reveals some errors in our process, let's work together to fix those processes. But let's not make an 11-hour change to what is an established process between both governments and both lines. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. You don't have to come back. Commissioner Johnson, just wanted to say thank you for taking your time to come down here and give us your opinion.
Thank you. With that, we're through with the public comment portion of the meeting.